We are live.
Okay, thanks. It's 1 o'clock and I'll call today's council meeting to order. We have an agenda in front of us and looking to see if there's any additions to the agenda. Side? Okay. Mr. Kraus? No. I'm looking at through 3 pieces of plexi to see you there. So just looking for motion, please, to accept. Councillor Phillips?
I'll make that motion.
All in favor of the motion, accepting the agenda? Okay. Carried, thank you. So we'll move on to number 3 at 3.1. We have a delegation from the Rocky Flying Club. And I just welcome Curtis. I'm not sure who is presenting. Is it going to be you, Curtis? Or?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to be presenting today?
All 3 of us have
Okay.
something a little bit different to say.
Sure. Okay. Well, do you want to come up front here, or where do you want to? Yep.
You're okay with me turning my back to you?
Oh, of course. Yes. Have a seat, Curtis, if you'd like, or.
I'm more comfortable standing.
Okay,
Very
that
much.
sounds fine. Yeah. And so I just want to make sure that you're all aware that we do record our council meetings, so you are being recorded live streamed right now.
Okay.
So I'll turn the floor over to you, and maybe if you wouldn't mind just introducing.
Sure. The 3 people that are up here today are from the Rocky Flying Club. We're a loosely knit group of people, obviously with an interest in aviation. Not only that, we like to be good community members, and not all the members of our club are pilots, but everybody who's a member of our club, and we do have ladies. There's only the 3 gentlemen here today, but we do have ladies in the club as well. So with me today is Mr. Wayne Peterson and Mr. Fred Nash, well known to this room, I suppose. Our purpose for being here today is a lot of the people who are making decisions on our local airport don't know anything about what we've done. There's hearsay. We're getting a little rant of social media right now and stuff like that. We want you to know what we stand for, what we stood for in the past, and where we'd like to go in the future.
Great. I will just tell you, Curtis, we have had your presentation, so we've all read your presentation over. We were given it on Friday. So if there's anything in here that you'd like to point out, please, I'd ask that you do that.
Yeah, okay. It's Fred's presentation, and Fred has at least one more thing that he would like to add to that.
Okay. Well, council and the staff, just a couple of things. You've read it, and you can pick out between the lines that you can get a glimpse that we're here to help build a community and support aviation. And things like that courtesy car, I mentioned in there, but we have 6 sponsors that pay for the car, the insurance, the maintenance, and the hassle. And I would like that council to remember their names a bit, especially if you sit on the airport commission, but it's Wayne Paderti Welding, Alstrom Air, Shunda Helicopters, Northern Air Support, the Flying Club, and Edwards Garage. Now that, you can see some of the benefits from there that the car brings to the pilot and to the community and this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that the Flying Club does that is unannounced or not recorded, even in there. Like, I know the Flying Club has worked on 6 hangars out there that help build the hangars from the concrete pad and up, and some are not quite as much, but it's 4 of the hangars out there, and the other 2 were in Clearwater County. And we have work bees, where the Rocky Flying Club works for the benefit of the club and the community. And a couple of the things that we do is no act of kindness, no matter how small, will ever be wasted. And you can see a lot of things by giving back with the Copa Flight for Kids. We did that for quite a while, and the Canadian Owners and Pilot Association actually does a little bit. They said, well, let's do it a little bit better, and they help us with the insurance and this kind of stuff, and they've got a real good process that we have to follow to have to be a member of that organization. And we've got over 1,000 kids and adults that we've taken for the flight. So the last thing I'll just mention before I turn it to Wayne, and he'll tell you about our future, is that people will return to where they're treated best. If that is an underlying business statement, that if you follow that throughout your life, you'll have more and more customers. And the Rocky Flying Club try to treat the public and our airport and the aviation community with that they'll want to return. So before, I'll turn it over to Wayne, and then we'll ask for any questions and answers. Wayne, Mr. Peterson.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. It is a privilege. Just a personal side note, 7 years ago I moved here, retired here because of the airport. It drew me here, and that's my passion. And I've been at over 60 airports in Alberta, and more than that in North America. And you have an amazing asset here in the community, and we've got to do everything we can to protect it. And going forward, I think we have a few ideas that we can help with the Flying Club. Some of the things that I picked up on just a recent air rally and traveling through Alberta was a lot of the little airports had little brochures, small, portable, and they were a collaboration between the counties, the town, and the flying clubs. They briefly list the positive things about the airport. They talked about what was in their communities and in the counties as far as upcoming events and things to draw the visitors back. We were part of an air rally here this summer that was over 23 airports just in the area, and I was the main contact there, and I got a few texts from people saying, I've never been to Rocky before, but because of this air rally I came, and I'm going to bring my family back because I really like what I've seen. So I think there's some things that we can do in the collaboration between all the stakeholders that we can maybe improve the situation going forward that can help us make the airport more of a drawing card, and to provide the information that people need, that they may want to move here, or they may want to holiday here, or more importantly, they want to spend their money here.
Okay. Questions and answers directed through our president.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming today to make this presentation. It certainly is long overdue, and we really appreciate all the effort that went into creating this information sheet for us. And I'd like you to know that we all also understand what an important asset the airport is to this community. So thank you for pointing that out, and we certainly do realize that as well. And it's exciting that you've got a few ideas to go forward for some new promotion of the airport, and I look forward to seeing where that goes. I have a question about the COPA flights. How are these children chosen for those flights?
I'll turn it over to Curtis if you like.
Okay, we have one fellow who's been doing this for longer than I've been in the club, and he contacts various youth groups, the youth church group, the school groups, and we've learned recently that theory of flight is part of one of the year's curriculums, so we always try to get those in on the spring one, because that's the time they hit it as well. So just by reaching out and contacting, anybody who's involved with the youth, we've had one year a whole delegation of kids. I think we had 48 or something from the two reserves just north of town, because they often get left out of these things too. Anybody who's involved with youth, that's where we recruit from.
Nice, okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Fred had mentioned earlier, we should ask is how many people here have had their children or know of neighbors' children or whatever who's taken part in our COPA for Kids flights. We do them two times a year. So we got to get more advertising.
Yeah.
One thing I would say to those in the room here, flying is a very unique experience. If you have not experienced it in a small aircraft and seen your town from the air or from the airport from the air, just talk to one of us and we'll make that arrangement and we will not be responsible for where that leads, and you want to buy an aircraft.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's a very expensive free flight.
That's right. No kidding, okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Councillor Phillips?
I have actually had the luxury of touring up in a small aircraft, and it is quite a unique experience for sure. One quick question. You're probably aware that we have discussion going on with the new air terminal, and what are your thoughts on input from not just the Rocky Flying Club, but other clubs and other organizations in that new terminal?
Our thought on the input to it?
Yeah,
I think everybody who's going to be a user of that should be asked kind of what they want to see in there. And also all of the taxpayers have to be asked what don't they want to pay for. I know I stood up at a commission or committee, is it a committee or commission meeting now, just recently, and said it's taken 42 years for this building to become outdated and need replacement, and we haven't quite grown into it yet. So, there were several people who stood up and gave opinions. A couple of them kind of like mine, but the taxpayers have input to it, and the user groups could have something they want to do too. So I think we have to encourage those inputs.
Just curious, how widespread is the thought that you've just expressed? Is there great for support for the new terminal and from your perspective?
I would just make a quick comment that looking at the terminal and the rumors we hear, there's not much life left in what you have because of what's there, the structure, and going forward. I know from visiting other airports, and you probably get the same impression from business people or other people that land there, that's your first impression of the town and the county. That first impression, it's hard to make another first impression. So whatever you do, make sure it's done right, and it suits what your goal is, and it doesn't have to be big and spacious to do that. It just has to send a message of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish here, and you need to make that first impression.
Yeah, I was just going to also say we are planning an open house, and that is going to be, do we know yet?
Your Worship, so Mr. Shanks and I are meeting with a consultant this week to figure that out. As COVID evolves here, open houses, but we will figure out some type of engagement process.
And obviously notice will be sent out to all users of that airport and stakeholders. So, Councillor Alderson?
I'm just curious if you guys have if you have social media pages that you share things to that we could also share and let people know more about the Rocky Flying Club that may not really be aware of it.
One of our members about 6-7 years ago maybe set one up, and it kind of ended when that member left the club. So no, we don't have it right now. We don't have it.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Phillips, then Councillor Auld.
Actually, my question has already been asked. I just look forward to hearing the input when we have the public open house. I look forward to hearing the comments and concerns and the ideas of all the flying club and all the stakeholders and users out at the airport. We look forward to that.
Councillor Auld?
Are you actively recruiting or trying to recruit new members to the Flying Club? It's kind of a two-part question. And if you are you running into any hurdles that we can assist on?
We've never really had an active recruitment campaign or anything like that. What we've done is by word of mouth, people who are interested in aviation, in airplanes and stuff, they generally come out to the airport, and there's 4 or 5 of us, we'll call ourselves airport rats. We're kind of hanging around there, and we talk to people coming through all the time, and, if they're interested, our airplane's out on the ramp, let them sit in it and look at all the gauges and everything that you've got there too. So we encourage people to come. We don't have an active program. That being said, within the last 2 months, we've got 8 or 9 brand new members. Actually, members of the Aerobata Club that uses our airport, a lot of those have joined recently. Kind of all in one wave.
So I guess what I'm kind of hearing then from that question is a robust marketing campaign for the airport should probably happen, from our side. I don't know in our spring and fall program guides if maybe there would be a room for a page advertising our airport in that. So something to discuss for future. Councillor Brown?
If somebody wants to learn to fly, how do they go about doing that? Is the flying club involved at all in that?
I'll turn this over to Mr. Knapp.
We used to be, the Flying Club in the past has run schools, sponsored the schools, and then private enterprise came in, and then some other ones from outside the, say from Red Deer or Macomb would come over and teach people. And currently, no, we don't have a school there. It's like everything else with this current economics and the COVID, it's difficult but we'll try to set people up, make them in contact with locations that we know that do have teachers.
Talk about the scholarship.
The other thing we did with the scholarship is we gave $1,000 scholarship to any student or any that wanted to go on to post-secondary and in a career in aviation somewhat. And so far we've handed out 2 of those. And we had to modify it a little bit where we gave the money and then the one student didn't finish and actually made it not even to Christmas and before he quit, but the scholarship was already given, so we do it in a split form now. And I'm happy to say the one fellow that we gave him $500 for his books and then $500 in January, he graduated, he became a pilot, a private pilot and then a commercial pilot, and he is a member of the club now, and he really likes participating in this COPA flight for kids. So, we didn't say you had to be a pilot. It could have been an aircraft mechanic. It could have been someone who worked with Transport Canada, or so long as it was aviation related. So we've given that out a few times. But like you say, we're a small group of people that promote aviation.
Of all the airports you gentlemen have flown into and out of, how many of them have anchor tenants?
Define an anchor tenant.
Well, somebody that is the main occupant or tenant of the airport terminal.
I'm going to guess on mine 10 to 20%, like Red Deer has Buffalo Airways and a few others. The bigger ones have the airlines and that kind of stuff. I think there's 7 forestry ones along the foothills, and we happen to be one of them, which was when I was chair of the Airport Commission. It was a real struggle when we upgraded the runways, because Red Deer had a very, how do you say this, they had a very concentrated and expensive approach to get this tanker base in Red Deer into Penwood. And that 20-minute extra each way would have made a huge difference. So we're blessed to have that. And just like when you get a chance to sit on the Airport Commission, you know your number 1 tenant and you know your number 2 and 3, this kind of stuff. So it's we appreciate what the forestry has done to that airport.
So it's not unusual then for an airport our size to not have an anchor tenant?
Well, I would guess 70% or 80% don't have anchors, although they may have 1 or 2, a construction company or something like that. It's hard to say. I don't have the exact stats.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Okay, great. Thanks.
Councillor Lorraine?
Yeah, I just have a question about the Flying Club membership. You mentioned that a number of your members are not pilots. Yep. So what is their contribution or their benefit of being a member of the Flying Club? What do they do?
Well, one thing that all of us own an airplane here, the three of us. Maybe they're 2-seaters or 4-seaters, and there's only one of us. So there's always extra seats. And so if somebody has a passion for flying and maybe is not in a position to own an aircraft or chooses not to, or it's not the right time in their life, whatever, we always have extra seats and they can enjoy the same things that we do on our flyouts to various areas. And plus, sometimes it's just, even though they might not own an aircraft, they still can bring to the table vast amounts of knowledge and expertise and just passion, right?
Cool. Thanks.
If I could add to that too, some of them are some of our most ardent volunteers, which is really good because when we're flying kids around, we got a certain amount of people. But for 5 airplanes in the air, you might have 11 or 12 people with a job to do on the ground. We really count on these people too, and they love being out there helping out with us.
That's awesome.
There's a safety indoctrination for all the kids, a training that they take it 10, 15 minutes, and then they go out and they touch an airplane, and then they're assigned a pilot that will take them to their airplanes, and they get a photo, and then you watch the excitement when the kid comes back and tells, Dad, I got to do it, and then it warms your heart.
That's so cool. Thank you.
It'd be great if we could know when that happens next year and then just come out and see the kids and the excitement. I would really appreciate that, actually. So if it's possible, when you do it again.
Well,
if
the
you would
last
let
two
us
have been
know.
canceled because
Right,
of COVID.
yeah. So hopefully going forward, they'll be able to be back on track. So, but I would really appreciate, I'm sure everybody would like to see that excitement. And so.
Yeah, our target age for that too is between the age of 8 and 18 years old. And what we really want to do is get to the kids between about 13 and 18, because those are the ones who might be thinking about, am I going to be a policeman, a nurse, or a cowboy, or this kind of stuff, right? And those ones that are just kind of looking forward about the possibilities. A lot of people, when I was a youngster, I never even dreamed that one day I might actually get a pilot's license and fly. I've never ever dreamed of a career in it, but we can open their eyes to this possibility. And right now there's, well, before COVID hit, I should say, a huge shortage of pilots, nationwide, worldwide. So
What about the
it's a
4-year-old
really good
kids?
time if you want to get into it right now. Any of you want a career change or anything?
There you go. Well, that's great. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? No? Well, I want to thank you again for your presentation, and we look forward to hearing more from your group and working together.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming.
So thanks for your time.
Yeah, have a good day.
I think my job easier than It's always good to see you. Take care.
It's like extra difficult today for some reason to see through all this.
I know.
So what is that?
It's like 17 heads, but I know there's only 2 people.
I thought it was just me.
No, it's something about today is like extra bad. It must be. Yeah.
When you sit, it won't be.
I can see Jason clearly right there though.
Transport.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we'll move on to 3.2. We have another delegation from the Rocky Mountain House Library Board. So welcome. And Robin?
Making time for us.
This is great. So I will turn the floor over to you. I'm just bringing up your letter. All right.
We just wanted to come in today to thank this council for all the ongoing support it's given to the library over the years and into the future. And that support is of course instrumental to the services and resources we provide to the community. And we're happy to discuss our 2021 budget request and any questions you may have.
No, I mean, a 0% increase, it's ideal for this, and we appreciate your effort in making that happen. So just so you know that, I guess I'm going to ask you the question, what is your biggest challenge right now during these times? The COVID times,
Yeah.
economic times?
Well, I don't know if there's one major challenge. Like there's lots of little challenges that this situation has brought on. Our ability to stay engaged with community members who maybe don't necessarily have reliable home internet access or home computer access, where, especially when we closed down, the question was like, how can we continue to provide services and resources to the people who don't have that available? And that's, we're open, people are coming in the doors, and that's not as pressing concern, but it's still something that's top of mind in really seeing where are there community service gaps that we can work towards eliminating. As we have gone back to delivering programs with limitations around capacity and making sure there's physical distancing, the challenge is just making sure we can continue to meet the service demand when the groups we can bring in for those programs is so much more limited.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was hard to see how much it was missed and know that we couldn't do anything about it. I think that was the hardest part, is frustration with especially like the teens, that was their place, that's where they went to chill after school, and for the longest time that wasn't available to them. And the typical summer, I think we did a really good job of supporting families and finding ways to connect with them even though they couldn't come in the doors. And I know everyone loved the story walks around the park. And
they were great.
That was a really unique idea that the staff came up with, and I like to see that outside of the box thinking that came out during this time, and knowing that we were missed it felt good. I think it's been, you want to do more as much as we can, and I think that our staff team has been amazing putting that together and making sure that they reconnected once we reopened. And part of the challenge is, as people are more siloed and insulated, we want to provide services, but we're also mindful of people are spending a lot more time looking at screens, and that can be a concern just from the fatigue of spending all your time on a screen, or parents having concerns about, can I give my kids something to do that isn't another thing where they're looking at a screen? So, we continue, going forward and seeing how things go, and that was something we're mindful of. At the time when we initially closed, like, what can we do that's not just through a screen? So we started building take-home craft kits that people could pick up at the door and take home, and whether or not they followed along with an online program, they could just do that on their own time as well with instructions. And really the challenge is just to continue pivoting services as situations change in the community. That's true any year, but this year especially is.
Yeah, for sure. I have Councillor Narang first, and then Councillor Alderson.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those, as much as the COVID situation is awful and been nothing but kind of a bad news story, it's kind of neat though that it did highlight the services that libraries provide that people don't necessarily know about. And I think what you said, Robin, is so key, is that the library was missed. And I think there's a lot of people in the community that don't realize what services libraries still offer in our age of technology. So, and that's sort of a bright spot through all of this, is just knowing that the services were in fact missed, and how unique and creative your services are. So thank you for that, Scott.
Thank you.
Councillor Alderson.
Sure, I just comment on the question. For one, the Rocky Library has amazing social media presence, so people should check that out. That might be live streaming today. But I was just wondering if you, one more comment, because not everybody's aware of this still, but the fees for library cards, there's no longer. But donations are always welcome because it's a vital part of the community, so I just want to get that out there. And question, maybe some exciting thoughts that maybe you have in your head for maybe what 2021 could potentially bring to the library, or any new programs you're maybe thinking of?
There's a lot of options. I've been talking with programmers, and again, how we move forward with those will just depend on the situation as it evolves. One thing that we've been
really excited to move forward with is a new film series in partnership with Rocky Cinemas. Because traditionally, every year we offer our Showcase Cinema series, which is through the Toronto International Film Festival. With layoffs and other things that they're dealing with, they're not able to support that right now. So we pivoted and created a new film series called Cults and Classics, where we're bringing in, cult and classic films that you wouldn't otherwise see in a theater, or maybe you never had the opportunity to see because they came out before you were born, or whatever the situation may be. And that's been well received so far, and it's something we're really excited to move forward with. And not only does it help fill that gap where Showcase Cinemas isn't continuing, but something where we can also bring more people safely into Rocky Cinemas.
What is the next one, and what date is that?
The next one, we're actually going to do a double feature screening December 12th, I believe, of Die Hard and Gremlins, which of course are Christmas movies. Followed by a matinee the following Saturday of Home Alone.
Oh, awesome.
Which actually later this afternoon we'll post about that on our Facebook page.
Oh, good. So we can all share it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Councillor Fraser?
It was just a comment, just saying that I was so impressed with the creative ways that even though you were closed, that you were still getting programming to the community. And I think that you guys are in contact with a lot of the community that isn't necessarily, I guess, out about needing that connection in the community. And you guys, so much stuff. There was the dinosaur head, and then you do video game competitions. You're doing the stuff with Rocky Cinemas. When COVID's over, I know we could do a Rocky Horror Picture Show. So you guys took kind of a crappy hand, and you made it really interesting and really creative, and you filled that niche even though you couldn't have your doors open. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have an amazing team at the library, and everyone's really pulled together to make the best of the situation and pivot to see how we can serve the community.
Councillor Auld, and then Councillor Phillips.
I'm just curious, I know we're not charging for memberships anymore, but do you still have a membership list? Do you know what your membership
Our system we use for people to access and more resources, we can consult that to see how many cardholders we have and who those people are.
Do you have an estimate of how many members you have?
I believe right now it's around 1,500.
Really?
So that's something.
That's great.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the messaging around the reduction of those fees got a little bit lost with everything else going on this year. So it's certainly we're looking to promote that more and see those numbers grow.
Excellent.
Just along that line, do you still have the Friends of the Library? And so if anybody wants to make a donation to the library, they can make a donation and get a tax receipt.
Actually, the library directly can provide tax receipts to donations of $20 or more.
Okay.
There isn't an active Friends Society, but the library can issue those tax receipts and take donations directly.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Phillips?
So beyond the budgetary ask of which 0% is fantastic. Thank you very much for making our jobs a little easier. Is there anything that the council can do? Anything that you can ask of council that we can do to help you beyond the budgetary?
I would just say use your platform to promote things if you see them. Follow us on Facebook, share those community activities, come to the community activities, encourage your friends to come. That's one of the best things that I find works for me is I share it, I get people excited about it, talk about what we're doing, and it gets more people in that we might not reach, a different demographic, different friend groups. The more different people are sharing, the better.
Yeah.
Encouraging and letting everyone know free memberships, and you can make a donation.
Okay. Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I was just curious about the free memberships. Is that a common practice among libraries in Alberta, or is it the size of the city or the town?
Well, when we
discussed moving forward with that change last year and implemented it earlier this year. It's something that we felt was past due, because Alberta was in fact the only province in which public libraries had been charging any sort of membership fee for decades, and it's something that has been growing in popularity throughout Alberta, and just over the past several years we've seen many libraries throughout the province eliminating those fees. Calgary and Edmonton notably eliminated theirs, I believe, about 5 years ago. And at this point, I believe it's around 60% of public libraries in Alberta have now eliminated those fees.
Councillor Brown?
Just two comments. Keep up the good work. I really appreciate what you bring to the community. And I have a question about your book donation program. And I'm curious as I don't understand how that ends up in the revenue column.
What line are you looking at, Brent?
Line 22.
Oh, sorry. So 22 for past years, there's a little bit of restructuring with our budget. So yeah, for 2021, that actually falls under line, 16. So book donations, what that actually refers to is items that have either been weeded from our collection because we've gotten new copies or updated materials, or items that were donated to us which for any number of reasons didn't fit into our collection, so they would end up on a sale table, at which point community members could come in and purchase those books by donation. So yeah, it's actually funds and donations from those book sales.
So people bring in books that either they bought new or read once or that type of thing actually are useful to you.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't been we are still accepting donations, not as much volume as we typically would, just because there's concerns around quarantine materials that we receive right now. But yeah, if people have items that are current within the past 5 years, they're in good condition, and they have no more use for them, they can donate to the library. If they fill a gap in our collection, we can add it to the collection. If not, we would either put them to that sale table for donations, or perhaps in one of the little library stands that are for the community.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you.
I have another question about COVID relief funds from the government. Did the library qualify for any of that?
No, the initial information that came to us was that we didn't qualify, just because the bulk majority of our revenue comes from municipality and provincial grants.
Right.
So we weren't as impacted as local businesses might otherwise be. There are some other options that we're currently investigating. They're a little bit different that we may be able to qualify for.
Okay. Do you have any idea what your revenue loss might be because of being closed down, or?
I mean, overall, we're not projecting a deficit at the end of the year just because of other cost-saving factors, such as when we were temporarily closed, there were some temporary layoffs.
Right.
There were, the kinds of programs and the volume of programs decreased, so there were some cost savings there. And also, when we initially closed down, we did a really thorough kind of clean sweep of the entire facility and discovered a lot of materials in storage that we realized, we can actually use these for programming for the rest of the year rather than having to purchase new supplies. And
great.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely revenue loss, but there's also a reduction in expenses, which fairly evenly balances out.
Well, that's great. What a great job you guys have done to get through this. So I appreciate all your efforts. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for coming in, and thanks for all the work you do, and we look forward to these movies in December.
Yes,
I feel like we're going to have to get our tickets soon, because that's going to sell out.
Yeah, I think you're right.
My fingers are crossed it sells out.
How many tickets can you sell, for that? Like, how many people?
That's actually
where things are a little tricky, because the guidelines that Rocky Cinemas have in place is that anyone who you're not in a cohort with, they want 2 empty seats between. So the amount of seats each cinema can hold really depends on who's coming.
buying tickets.
So like there's 150 seats per cinema, or 148. It's like if a bunch of large groups come together, then there's not as many empty seats between. But if it's, a bunch
But
of
there's
people.
still the 50%. Does that apply to the 50% gathering?
I believe for cinemas, they have a facility restriction of 100. Yeah, so as far as like actual seats in one theater, it's hard to say. So that in that case, we're not actually selling advance tickets, because it's going to depend on who comes and how those seats fill up as to how many we can actually accommodate.
So there are no advance
Early
tickets. is what
with
I
your
know.
cohort.
That's it. Big families.
Yes.
Big
And
cohorts.
the one nice thing that Ben did with this is you can get the punch pass with it's 8.
Yeah, it's an 8-punch pass for $70, which, if you buy one and you want to use it for multiple people in your family, you can, and then you can just buy a new punch pass when that's used up for any other films you want to see later on.
At the library, we pick those up.
Yeah, we sell those punch passes at any time, but again, those don't necessarily guarantee your seat for any individual film. That's just kind of on a first come, first served basis. And I mean, so far we haven't filled up. We had 41 people in attendance to The Princess Bride on the weekend, 40 before for our screening of The Shining.
The Shining,
Yeah. So based on how cinema looked at that point, I would say it's, we could easily get another 10 people in, possibly even 20, depending. But as the situation moves forward, that's something we're talking to Rocky Cinemas to make sure we are following all the guidelines for capacity.
Sure, thank you.
Maybe some live concerts, too, or not live stream concerts would be good too.
Yeah.
Because I'm missing live music.
For sure.
So, I don't know if anybody else is, but.
Definitely.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming in. I appreciate everything you're doing for our community.
Yeah, thank you all for your time.
Okay, take care. Okay, so we'll move on to number 4.1, adoption of the previous minutes from November the 10th, 2020. Everybody had a chance to read those over. Okay. Just looking for a motion to. Councillor Alderson?
I'll make a motion to adopt the council meeting minutes from November 10th.
All in favor of that motion? It's carried. Thank you. Number 5.1, delegation. So the Rocky Flying Club. Just looking for a motion, please, to accept the Flying Club delegation as information.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Brown. All in favor of that motion? Thank you. That's carried. Looking for another motion to accept the Rocky Mountain House Library Board. Or we actually have to accept their budget.
Yeah, Your Worship, for what they presented to council.
Yeah.
Just for council's information, so at the service level retreat, we also talked about payroll services cost in their budget. I mean, it's the same it was last year. So I don't want to upset their budget, so that might, it's up to council obviously, but that might be just for a discussion for 2022 and 2021.
Right, okay.
As long as we have it ahead of time so that it's not being budgeted or anything like that, for sure. But I think we need that discussion though.
Okay, so we're just going to accept their budget then as,
Will that impact our budget much?
No.
Okay.
what was that line item again? Do you
It's for
remember?
payroll, I believe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
$1,100
Okay.
is what's in their budget.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Do we need to accept that as information with that?
No, I think, well, if council accepts their budget, then we're fine. We'll just do our budget accordingly. That makes sense.
Councillor Alderson?
I'll make that motion to accept the library budget as presented. I think they've done a phenomenal job of trying to hit that 0% increase along with PRL, so I'll make that motion.
Okay, everybody clear on that motion? Okay, all of that motion to accept the budget? Okay. Thank you, that was carried.
Just
Councillor Phillips?
So do we need to give admin direction on that for next year's budget, or is that just?
Your worship, that's in the service level action items. And we're bringing that back to council.
So we can have that discussion when that comes back. Okay, moving on to 6.1. Clearwater Regional Fire Rescue Services Vehicle. I read that wrong. Service vehicle use. I'll turn that over to Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So council has asked administration to research the personal use mileage of command units for the fire department. So we reviewed the county policies on personal use of vehicles. And as Chief DBN said in the ICC meeting, and they, under the policy, they're, take it from home to work and just allow minor stops on the way back from work. And then I did have a quick discussion with Mr. Emmons. One of the exceptions to that is probably the battalion chiefs, who will actually take the command units to their place of work, because if they get a call during their work hours, they often leave work and respond to the call.
Councillor Brown?
Was there any discussion regarding the civilians riding in the vehicles?
Your Worship, no, there wasn't. I mean, that would not fall under their policy.
Okay, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Phillips?
I guess for us, because I don't have an issue if that's how they're being used, because that makes sense. They need to go straight to a scene. I'm just wondering if we need to look at what the mileage trigger is for replacement on those vehicles. If the mileage is just because they're going back and forth and there is some personal use in there, maybe what they're set at for 100% municipal vehicle is too low. They seem to be on a relatively quick turnover, and I'm wondering if that has to do just with they do more mileage because they're doing, just if that was a better benchmark for us to look at.
And isn't there a difference between emergency vehicles and their other vehicles?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah.
So I did include in the package their emergency vehicle maintenance replacement policy.
Yeah.
But that policy does not take into consideration the command units. They're not listed. So then I also did include for council information their vehicle maintenance replacement policy, which would probably be more applicable to the command units. And I don't really know that policy is not a mileage thing.
Yeah.
Right.
My question is kind of echoing along Councillor Fraser's question, is in the capital budget, they're budgeting every 7 years for these command units to be replaced. That doesn't seem like a long time for these units. I'm not sure what kind of kilometers they put on those vehicles in 7 years, but to me, a 7-year-old command unit vehicle probably won't take as much punishment as the other vehicles. The command units probably are, in my opinion, probably one of the better taken care of vehicles, because they're not, they're just being driven around basically. So 7 years doesn't seem like a long enough life, a long enough time. It should be potentially looked at. Maybe it should be 10 years, maybe it should be 12 years. 7 just seems too soon to replace those vehicles. And I'm just specifically talking command units, not the other vehicles.
So what's council direction then? Councillor Alderson?
Yeah, well, from my understanding, and the years might seem short, but it was still based on the mileage. And so, I mean, if they do fall within a reasonable average of whatever would be average around the province, as long as it falls within a reasonable range, I think it'd be fine. I don't know what that range is, and I'm I'm certainly not a professional at that, but maybe that's what to find out. Like, what is the average? What do we compare to the average in Alberta? That might be something I'd be interested in.
Mr. Crows, I believe though there's an emergency vehicle number though, is there not? Like a kilometer or a year specific to emergency vehicles? Would that be province-wide?
Your worship, so, I mean, for like their pumpers and stuff like that, that's all through the NFPA standard.
Right.
Which in their policy, they pretty much mirror 20 years.
Okay.
But that does not apply to
The command unit?
the command units.
Councillor Fraser, Councillor Uranic, Councillor Phillips?
Well, and I guess that's my question. If we're looking at the emergency vehicles are on a 20-year replacement rotation, the command trucks that arguably probably aren't getting as much, physical jarring, are being replaced in less than half the time. It's just something that I think maybe we have a discussion about with them.
Okay, Councillor Lorraine?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I'm thinking as well. Because even in their municipal vehicles and equipment policy that's here, it doesn't talk about replacement, does it? It just talks about usage. And then,
Your worship, I think there's a clause in there where,
well, there's something.
so I think it's under replacement item 3, any vehicle regardless of its age may dispose of is determined that has become unreasonably costly to maintain. I think that's probably their guideline.
So it's based on individual units then?
Yeah.
Councillor Phillips?
I just go back to the, after 7 years of use, has that vehicle even been used 50% of its capacity? Is there life left in that vehicle?
Yeah.
I just think it's prudent from a fleet point of view. You look at each individual vehicle. Just because it says you should replace it after 7 years doesn't mean you should replace it after 7 years. You should look at that vehicle, and if it's deemed that that vehicle can get another 1, 2, 3, or 5 years of life out of it, then that capital purchase should be pushed off by 1, 3, or 5 years.
And those questions were asked at the meeting, and justified by kilometers. Do you recall, Councillor Brown, that?
The question was answered, I think, to our satisfaction, that they aren't replaced just because the time is up. They have to go through and Mr. Cross can correct me if I'm wrong, they have to go through an inspection, their fleet vehicle inspection requirements, they have to meet those as well. So if the vehicle is breaking down, then it'll be replaced. If it's able to continue another year, then they push it another year.
And as I said, and those are questions that have to be asked every year at budget time when those units come up.
They also mentioned that the vehicles are not, they don't document use of the command vehicles, like they don't keep a log of when they hop in the vehicle and go. And the suggestion was made that the number of command vehicles could be dropped by half. But the rationale they have for the number they have is that there could be 2 or maybe 3 events going on at the same time where more than one command vehicle is off doing its thing. So,
Councillor Alderson?
To me, that's a good point, because if there were business vehicles, it would be very well documented as to when they're taken, how often, where they're going, and really it should be treated no differently. And I think, and just so people are aware of what's happening with the vehicle, that I think that should be a discussion going forward, that it should be.
yeah, it is a concern for sure.
Mr. Krause, we could just put that back on the list then for the next ICC meeting? Okay. Any more comments on this? No, we're good? just a motion to accept this report, I guess, is information? Or no, actually?
Did you want it in the motion that it be brought to the next ICC?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I do.
I'll make that motion and also include that we bring it to the next ICC meeting.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Thanks for getting all that information. How are we doing? Do we need a 5-minute stretch? Are we good? Okay, we'll keep going then for a bit. Moving on to number 7. Nothing. Correspondence for action, nothing. No correspondence for information. We'll move on to 10.1. CAO report.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So just some highlights in the past month. So obviously waste negotiation meetings are consuming some time. They're still ongoing with, I think our next negotiating meeting is now established for November 30th, if I'm correct. Pleased to announce in the last month we concluded the RASA agreement. And in our finance report, you'll see we're just finalizing the grant reporting documents with the auditors. So that was probably the major highlights from the past month, and the other meetings obviously involved council and so forth, so everyone's aware. Under legislative services, I think probably what's really up and coming for them is election training, which they have started. And I know sort of communication reports a little scant this time, but obviously still busy with everything informing our public.
She's busy tweeting.
Tweeting, yes. That is our Twitter account has been reactivated, and I think tweets are going out.
Good. I just have a quick question about the North Saskatchewan River Park, just from talking with Rasa. Hopefully in the spring we can do a kind of a ribbon cutting or some sort of a celebration to celebrate the partnerships, all the work that's the volunteers have done down there to make that roof possible, and to celebrate the park and everything that's happening.
Yeah, Your Worship, that is in the plans for the spring.
Okay.
I think I think we're trying to coordinate it with the Spray Park opening too the same day.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like having ministers out for that, if I'm correct.
Your Worship, we are looking at the weekend, for that week prior to the May long weekend for a double ribbon cutting. So
good. Awesome. That's great to hear. Okay, thank you.
Sharpen those scissors.
Yeah.
Just trying to get 54th Street in there and do 3.
Well, that'd be kind of cool. It'd be ground.
No pressure.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for the CAO report? I'll make a motion to accept the CAO report as presented. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. So we are on to, I think, Recreation Department. Welcome, Mr. Mint.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. I will try to keep my report rather succinct today. Just to follow up on the RASA and the North Saskatchewan River Park. Yeah, we're working on the signage as part of that grant. So
good.
We'll have all those things ready for our spring ribbon cutting. So the last month, just a couple of highlights. The Curling Club operational agreement 1-year extension has been completed and signed with the Curling Club. I'm currently working with them. They're looking for a new concession operator. They received word that the current operator is not going to leave them in the lurch, but they're hoping to have a new provider in place for the new year. So I know Mr. McCrindle is accepting proposals at this point, and we'll work together as it is within the town facility and vetting those potential vendors. I've also met with Gary Bethune from the Rocky Mountain Truck Wagon Association. Now that the RASA agreement's done, we're working on tweaking their agreement. We've got a draft agreement that he's reviewing right now. We've met just this on Monday, and we anticipate that that will get signed here shortly as well. So we'll have our two major users, we'll have those agreements in place.
Oh, good.
From a project's perspective, Splash Park, we've held our last walkthrough. Actually, I see an email today that the final invoice from the vendor is going to be processed, so that project will wrap up. Just waiting on the signage to be done for sponsor recognition. The Spray Park Council is working on that. The last of the video surveillance cameras were installed yesterday. We had cameras slated to go on the Spray Park building. That building's up, and they installed those cameras yesterday and they're operational, so that's another project that's wrapping up. The other thing that we've been doing this last week is setting our rec facility Christmas hours, and the council talked about the stats and how they all fall. And we've done some promotion previously in the program guide is what some of our hours of the public skating times, the pool operating hours. So we've set those times, and we'll be promoting that, working with Laura, and getting that out to the public well in advance so that people are aware of what our rec facility hours will be over the Christmas week.
Good.
From a maintenance side of things, Gord is working and finalizing the last couple of quotes, and then we'll be starting some work on the post house, and our facility maintenance staff have been in there doing touch-up painting and getting ready for all the work that will need to happen there. From FCSS perspective, Andrew's got a lengthy list of things that they're doing. Can report that Rebecca is healing quite well from her injury. She is still on a modified work schedule, working partly from home. She is able to drive, but limited periods of time with the injured foot is her gas pedal foot. So she's in the office 3 days a week right now and working either two from home or out in the community doing her visits. Arena operations, just status quo. We're busy. We're monitoring all of the changes that are happening with COVID and the latest announcements from the province and obviously from the sport organizations, Hockey Alberta, the restrictions they put on usage. So I know Tiffany and Mike are on top of all of that. And again, we are not allowed to take reservations for ice from groups from Red Deer. The map, they can be in that purple zone, which is an enhanced, but according to the province, hockey can still happen within those areas as long as they're not coming from the major centers, which include Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, those types of things. So, so we know that there was at least one game canceled last weekend because it was a Red Deer team playing the hub team. But we're monitoring that, and the staff and guest services are pretty diligent about asking the right questions to determine if they're getting calls, are they local? Typically, it's our common user groups that are picking up some of the additional ice with some of the availability that's coming through.
We'll wait, maybe just wait until you finish.
We are reviewing, and council will see that in the budget, we're in the search for perhaps an updated and a new recreation booking software. The Max Galaxy program is no longer going to be supported after September of next year, so we've started the process of looking at other options. We've had at least one demo from ActiveNet, and we have another one with a group called Perfect Mind that Tiffany's working and setting up. So we're starting that process. We've got time, but we want to make council aware that we're starting the process of looking at that. And that, when we do decide on another vendor, it'll probably be a 10 to 12 week process of transitioning. From a facility usage perspective, Tiffany has provided some statistics there on bookings. Lisa's also provided some statistics on the number of Rocky passes and the use of the gym facilities. Happy to report that the pickleball courts are getting used. We're averaging about two hours a day for now. We've also brought in some portable badminton nets. They just arrived late last week, so we'll be promoting that the badminton will also be an option for use because it's the same court sizes. So.
Dodgeball.
And lastly, from the Aquatic Center, Glenn has provided a report. I mean, they're busy. They've had a couple of their public swims where they're getting close to the capacity of what with COVID. I think right now our capacity is 65 people following the COVID, and we've had very few that we have to turn away. So I think the bookings of lanes for lap swims and their AquaFit classes still carrying on. And some of those changes will probably carry forward as we, if we ever get back to a new normal.
We will.
And just, in the last page of my report on the daily admissions, you can note that for October, compared to October of 2019, we were only down a couple hundred visits. So I think that sort of reflects that people are coming back and are excited to be using the facility again.
Okay. Thanks, Wes. I'm happy to hear that. I did have a concern yesterday about somebody wondering if teams from Red Deer they'd heard that they were practicing here, and so I'm happy to hear that the assurance is they're not at this time. So
one of the concerns went all the way down to the individual athletes. If they live in Red Deer and they're on a team that's not in Red Deer, they're still not permitted to participate. So hard to track that, but that's the direction that we're taking, and I know that impacts, I think the Junior Bs, their league made the decision to shut down their program for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Even though, there's some, a little bit of a gray areas whether they could or couldn't, but they do have a number of players that would come out of Red Deer.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Phillips.
I'm hoping we never get to a purple zone designation, but if we do, how does that affect rec hockey, which typically plays amongst themselves from Rocky, or even minor hockey when you're playing other non-purple zones?
Yeah, the document from the province highlighted that those minor team sports, even though they were other purple areas, as long as they weren't coming from the major zones, they were at this point exempt from not playing. As far as the over 30 group, it's a local group. They're not traveling. They don't have people coming externally. They're that cohort group. I don't anticipate there would be any impact to their use of the facility until such time as the government comes up and takes it the next step like we did in March and basically closes all facilities. But right now, even though we might get to that enhanced status, I believe it's a little over 10 people with the area we've been classified as enhanced, but I don't think the immediate impact on our facilities is going to be huge.
Thank you. Councillor Alderson?
My question's around vendor. I'm just wondering, how picky, maybe picky is the wrong word, but does it have to be very specific? Does it have to be a catering type of thing? But what if there was a coffee shop that wanted to expand in town, and potentially that's a great spot that they could be in, or maybe there's something like, as an example, a Dairy Queen that would like to put another Orange Julius there because it would serve also the gym, not just the the crowd for curling, or, and maybe if it's catering, maybe there's still businesses in town that wouldn't mind expanding, such as a co-op that has a cafeteria but could serve food if that's what's required there. How specific does it need to be, or is it a matter that they're paying the rent for that spot?
Again, the lease right now is with the curling club.
Right.
So I think they're looking at all options, and whether it's, they're providing the counter service for our patrons using the Christensen Center and the arena, sort of that take and go type of thing. They do offer a plated service right now in the curling lounge. But there is also the opportunity, if you have a catering business, it is a commercial kitchen that could typically get used or rented out. And so I think at this point, talking with Gord from the curling club, they'll entertain all proposals that come.
Okay, thank you.
Are they getting many, do you know?
I think he's had at least one interest, and I understand even maybe the Junior B club might be interested in taking on something like that. All the proposals are going directly to Gord, and he's trying to keep me in the loop.
Good. Thank you. Any Councillor Narang?
I just have a question about the new order from Dr. Hinshaw. So this morning she tweeted out that she's specifically stating that for any sports, junior A, B, or C, or collegiate level sports are not impacted by this new order restricting sporting. Is that what we're following as well?
We are following those, but unless the league or the provincial sport body sets a standard which is higher than what the Alberta government has set. So that's where, as an example, the Junior Bs, according to the province, they would be allowed to continue as long as they're playing teams that aren't in the other enhanced zones. But their league themselves have basically said, we're going to take a break for 2 weeks, which includes practices or games. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Kent. So we have public services. Is that you, Mr. Krause?
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Quinlan gives her regrets, could not make it today. So under finance, obviously the major task right now is the budget, and thanking all directors and all the finance staff. They have completed the budget, and it's nicely balanced. Plus a 10-year capital plan is drafted that will be presented to council. We have also worked through our 10 years worth of debt servicing for the major projects on the horizon, and that's all worked out for council's review. That includes our wastewater facility and so forth. So we're presenting that to council in first week in December. I believe we have it earmarked. Another major task finance is doing is going through the assets for waste management. There's a lot of assets to go through with the county and to sort that out, but progress is being made. And then, again, that's good news, is we'll be bringing forward a report on capital projects eligible for MSI funding to council. Like I think I've previously reported to council, we got about $1 million sitting up there in MSI grant funding that we can allocate. So that'll be coming before year end for sure. And I think that's pretty much the highlights, Your Worship. If council has any questions.
I'm looking forward to seeing the MSI report and using up the funds that are still outstanding. So I think that's great. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Coulson? Okay. So we have engineering and operations next. No, just kidding. That's recreation.
I can do Rob.
I mean planning.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Just a couple of highlights. I want to welcome back my EDO after 2 weeks absence. He had a little bit of a medical issue, but we're glad he's back with us. In regards to his duties, he's still continuing on doing his duties when he was absent. He's still continuing to work with MDB regarding the economic development strategy. We did meet with council on November 10th with the consultants for a quick Q&A in regards to what the community should look like in the near future. Passport to Christmas is on for the second year. Launched on November 12th. We have 56 businesses on board and 20 sponsors. So I think this year there's weekly prizes now in regards to and more than one weekly prizes. So we had quite a few sponsors come on board financially to help with some of the prize money. In regards to our Travel Alberta funding, we did get a grant from Repsol, the local oil and gas company. They had some funding that our EDO reached out to, and that funding will help the local businesses promote themselves through our Rocky Online program. Nice. And they'll be showcasing 24 businesses within our community. So good for the EDO for getting a grant from Repsol for that, because that's the grant that we're missing from Travel Alberta that didn't give us funding for. So that will complete our project for Travel Alberta. Eastern Slopes Group, we did get a grant for $22,000 from Travel Alberta. The program is called Ways to Winter. There's 5 communities that are participating. It's more or less to promote winter activities in our communities, but also to put heads on bed pillows within the community as well. So that is a grant from the Travel Alberta that we haven't had to put any money into yet. In regards to planning community development, in the process of having an open house tomorrow evening at the Subway Room for the land use bylaw and the MDP. We do have it online for people to comment on. I just got my first comment this afternoon. I was sitting over there in the corner, so it was a positive comment, so which is nice to see. We're moving in the right direction. Wildfire mitigation strategy. Council approved the recommendations at a land task force meeting. Still involved with the electric vehicle project. We did send letters out to the ministers and MLA. We're still waiting for a response back from our local MLA with that letter. Our GIS training for staff members, we actually were participating in the GIS online. Weren't getting a whole lot out of it, so we did our own GIS training for the public works staff. And it was really beneficial, and I think the public works staff realized what GIS can do moving forward. So it was well worth the afternoon or the morning that we participated in it. Just reviewing the safety codes for the FCSS relocation over to the post house building. And finally, the sale for the 4411 54th Street Habitat for Humanity is complete. So we're down to one affordable housing unit that we may, pass on and sell to Habitat summer of 2021. In regards to protective services, as you know, we're down to 2 officers still. They did have a presence during the weekend of Halloween with the RCMP. I think I mentioned this before, but the highway crossing on Highway 11A, we did issue a ticket, and we have a presence out there for the crosswalk, people not stopping. Officers have been, whether it's due to COVID or dealing with a lot of neighbor disputes out there, so we don't get too involved, but at the same time, when, say if there's infractions with parking and that, we'll go out there and try to mitigate as best we can, which I think they have been doing a successful job in mitigating some of the issues. On Halloween, the officers did hand out candy to the kids. They got well received by the public as far as being out there and having a presence. In regards to our CPO, we did interviews yesterday. There's some good candidates that we interviewed here, so we'll hopefully be able to nail down a candidate here in the short next couple weeks. also with our complaint line, we've got some numbers as far as number of calls coming through. In the last 3.5 months, we actually received 353 calls. So the number is being used. So, which I think it's showing that our officers are getting better response back to the complaints a lot sooner. And some of them are, major calls, some of them are minor calls, but we've had 303 calls come through the complaint line.
Valid calls, or it's
We're trying to narrow it down, because I'm thinking sometimes when you call the number, sometimes it goes right to them. So we're kind of analyzing it, but that's the numbers that were provided by Microwage in regards to them receiving calls.
Thanks.
Sorry, just a question about that, more serious, but is it kind of widespread type of thing, or is a lot of the calls regarding the same sort of issue?
It varies. Like sometimes it's just parking in front of a driveway, or it could be a cat, or it could be a dog, or it could be
another cat.
Snow on the sidewalk. Like, it's pretty minor. It varies. It varies the calls. Yeah, we're kind of a catch-all. I hate to say that, but that's the number that they call.
Okay, I just have a quick question about Plains Midstream. What's that?
They're working on the north end by just north of Riverview Phase 2. There's they're just doing a pipeline. Oh. They've been at it for the last year and a half.
Oh, okay.
But they just come and go. So nothing major as far as nothing to worry about as far as...
No, but is it a new?
No, it's an existing one. There's refurbishing it.
More linear from that?
Yeah.
Councillor Brown?
Just want to tag on to Councillor Alderson's question. The complaints line, are the calls coming from specific areas, or again, are they spread right?
It's widespread. And the thing is, we haven't really been, I haven't really been pushing the officers to narrow down, what areas, but moving forward, if we wanted to get details like that, I could ask a little more documentation. Some of them do create files from the complaints. Some of them are just a verbal resolution.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Phillips?
Just to tack on to that as well, how many of those calls should be RCMP in nature?
That I can't comment. Maybe I'll bring that back. I'll see if I can get some definite answer. I don't want to give you an answer or a number that isn't valid, so I'll have to find that for you.
What's that number again?
846-4268.
4268.
It's like a cross, or I don't know, a cross, but around the middle digit.
Oh.
Yeah, 846-4268.
Okay. I just have a question about the Ways to Winter program. What exactly, how does that work? What is it?
The thing is, they got $23,000. So it's 5 communities: Rocky, Drayton, Edson, Whitecourt, and Hinton. So they're going to be working together with Seekers Media. And they're focusing on overnight lodging, stay, and play, like cross-country skiing, snowmobiling, ice bubble tours. This campaign will run from January to March 2021.
Nice. And we'll promote it on our website?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And Facebook?
And through Travel Alberta as well.
Great.
Yeah.
So we're going to get some good exposure out of that. Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Fraser?
Oh, I was just going to say that due to COVID, it looks like the Von Hollands are doing their Christmas decorating this year. They're on the Candy Cane Drive, and so they're back.
Yeah,
if you're looking for more winter stuff.
They have flags along their cul-de-sac there.
Good. Any other questions for Mr. Schrader? Okay. Thanks very much. And is Mr. Shanks?
Your Worship, Mr. Shanks gives council his regrets. He can't make it today, so presenting his report. He did send me a list of what he wanted me to highlight for council. So 54th Street is wrapping up for this year. It will be done shortly. The gravel is going down, so that's the sub-base for the road. So that's good progress. That means all of the sewer line and storm sewer systems are in, and now they built it back up to the sub-base stage. The new truck for the water treatment plant is in and getting outfitted. All other capital works for engineering and operations are complete. Mr. Shanks is working with our airport manager on creating a winter maintenance program and after-hours plowing policy, so that's being researched right now. As I said previously, Mr. Shanks and I are meeting with a consultant about the airport terminal on Thursday to put together some type of public engagement plan for that terminal. So far this year, we've had 14 water breaks. 8 of those have been actually service line breaks. So he was a bit surprised at the most service line breaks we've had in 1 year. So that's just connecting to older pipe. That's basically what it is. So that's the highlights he wanted me to present to council. So, but if council has any questions, I will try to answer them.
I just have one question on the meeting with residents over treed and natural areas. What is that? Do you know what that might mean?
Your worship,
I can ask.
I know there was a concern of a strip of land that was treed, but it actually belonged to the park. So I think it's more of an education, like to a mobile home park. It's on their property, so it's more of an education who is responsible for what's in that area.
Okay, thank you. Is it Councillor Auld and Councillor Phillips?
Just curious, do you know what's going on 47th Avenue? Right in front of the Napa Birch location?
Yeah, that's busy today.
Your worship, I do not.
The way I look when I drove by, I would say they're redoing their manhole. Look like there's like kind of the casing looked like it was falling apart and looked like they're taking pieces out of it when I drove by. So that's my best synopsis, I guess, as far as what my view of it.
Wasn't a major break of any kind, it just maintenance.
Feel tweet coming on.
Yeah, I do too.
No, because it was a sewer manhole there down, so.
Okay,
But your
Councillor
worship, I
Phillips?
will inquire and get that out to council for verification.
Okay.
The question I had is, do we have CN approval yet for that rail crossing on 54th Street yet? Or?
Your worship, we do have CN approval, and I know they got the base down. So I think there's some deficiencies there from that contractor, because it's not our contractor doing the work. But we should be ready to go next year for consulting.
All right, any other questions? Oh, Mr.
Not a
Schneider.
question, just a comment regarding Councillor Phillips' question regarding number of calls. 2 out of the calls should have been RCMP calls. Okay. And there are certain areas of the town that have more calls than others.
Shocked. All right. Just a motion to accept the, sorry, we don't have any other, no, we're good. Motion to accept the director's reports as presented. Councillor Fraser?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? That's carried, thank you. The action list, 11.1. And that 8.2 is on there, is coming up here shortly, so. The airport open house. Any questions on the action list? Councillor Narang?
Just about the town hall, with the RCMP, is there?
Your worship, I haven't reached out to Staff Sergeant Dinsdale yet. I'm not too sure if you have.
There's, so your worship, the Sergeant Dinsdale has asked the town for that, and so we're waiting for him to get back to us regarding a time that will work for the RCMP.
Maybe we can reach out again.
We've said yes, we will help. Name the date.
Okay. And we reach out. Because I think we were going to try and meet Sergeant Dinsdale anyways.
Yes, they were.
Okay. All right. just a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the action list.
Thank you. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried, thanks. Okay, it is 2:28 and I'll call a 5-minute break.
Live, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll move on to number 12. Does anybody have any administrative inquiries? No? Councillor Narang, did you? No. Does anybody have any notices of motion? No? Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. So I will just call a 2-minute recess. And yeah, I guess we can go into.
Just make a motion to go into session?
Oh man, I'm failing today. Councillor Alderson, can you help me out here?
A motion to go into closed session.
Okay. We have a motion to go into closed session. It is 2:33 now. All in favor of that motion? Whew, recovered.